Ladies, gentlemen, and Spiritborn of all ages, with Season 7 fast approaching, if you're someone who's interested in playing the Spiritborn, you're probably wondering what build you should run to push through the early game and into the endgame as quickly as possible. So today I'm here to talk about my recommendation. The setup focuses heavily on Eagle skill damage, using Quill volley as the core resource spender early on. But once you unlock the Spirit Hull, you can stick on primary Eagle for the Spirit Feathers when you evade, which do absolutely incredible damage early in the game when your main offensive stat is pretty much just the damage number on the weapon itself. You also want Eagle secondary Spirit Hull when you have that unlocked too, as especially in the earlier game section where critical hit chance is hard to come by, having stacking critical hit chance that increases as you move, which we naturally will do while leveling, is fantastic, especially with the recent change to make this crit chance bonus persist for 4 seconds after you get your first crit, instead of just disappearing after 2 seconds. It's a much bigger difference. We then also will be, of course, working around Soar, as it's a very powerful movement ability to keep your actual pace of progression nice and quick. Then we have one of my favorite general combos, which is using Razor Wings as a multi-charge skill with the Hunter ultimate, which can reset its own cooldown if you kill during its duration, as well as the Intricacy passive, which when you use an ultimate skill, resets the charges and allows a free use of your most recently used potency, defensive, or focus skill. This allows you to sort of cycle through Razor Wings and the ultimate, which is really just a ton of fun, and at least until you run out of resets. That said, Razor Wings as a main build archetype is looking quite strong in the endgame this time around, depending on how the balance has landed exactly, so essentially view it as we start off with Quill volley at low level, shift towards being more evade focused in the level 20 to 30 zone, and then from there onwards we will slowly work more towards being focused on Razor Wings as our main offense, which will eventually let us cut out some of the other skills and make room for more utility and defense once we reach endgame as well. All that said, let's start with these skill points and the order you want to take them in. The legendary aspects I'd recommend picking up when you're able to, the Runewords and Witchcraft Powers you'll be seeking out as soon as you can find them, and then what to do with your Mercenaries as well, of course. To begin with, you'll want to pick up Thrash as well as Enhanced Thrash. This will unlock your core skills over here, so we want to grab Quill Volley as well as Enhanced Quill Volley, which makes enemies vulnerable consistently when used with Advantageous Quill Volley, because this lets us shotgun out the attack at close range to stack high amounts of damage on our enemies, incentivizing just attacking them from close up anyways, making the enhancement work too. After that, we'll be grabbing Sharp Thrash as well. This gives you 2 stacks of ferocity every time you hit Thrash's 3rd attack combo, which results in bonus attack speed for us and lets us get to our bigger damage more often in this early build and spend sort of stage of the build. After that, we'll be grabbing Soar as our movement skill for the setup, as well as Enhanced Soar 2 for either a guaranteed crit within combat or increased movement speed otherwise. Then we'll be grabbing 1 point of Focal Point as a passive, mostly just as a gateway for 2 ranks of Apex for 6% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, which is doubled against elites. After that, we'll be picking up Scourge as another skill for our setup, as well as Enhanced Scourge for the increased damage multipliers to crowd controlled enemies from this, and then Adaptable Scourge, which will give us lucky hit chance to lifesteal 8% of our damage done, which does give us a fair amount of sustain as well while it's active. At this point, we'll be putting the remaining 4 points into Quill Volley itself to increase its damage, and the remaining 1 point into the Apex passive as well to increase the damage we get from there too. But then also we'll be grabbing Message Soar over here to make you unstoppable for 4 seconds after you land from Soar. Then we'll be picking up 1 rank of the Brilliance passive for increased Eagle skill damage based on our movement speed bonus, and 3 ranks of Acceleration as a passive. This one is different right now on the live servers to what it will be in Season 7, so ignore the tooltip here. What this will do with 3 ranks is give us 1 bonus evade charge, and it will make our Eagle skills do a lot more damage for 2 seconds after we evade. Not just the next attack after evade anymore, it will be 2 seconds afterwards, which is actually quite potent and easy to sustain in this build that will be partially based on evade and partially not. At this stage, you should either be at or near your Spirit Hull unlock, and once you have that unlocked, you want Eagle primary Spirit Hull, at which point you want to change some of these skill points around too. We'll be getting rid of Thrash as our basic skill and instead using Thunder Spike, as well as Enhanced Thunder Spike to make it generate additional vigor, and then Accelerated Thunder Spike, which makes it auto-cast Thunder Spike whenever you evade, and make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. The main reason that we want to do this switch to Thunder Spike here, now that we've made this difference, is that the 3rd attack in a row for Thunder Spike reduces your evade cooldown by 5 seconds, which essentially just resets it, making a lot of sense for the setup that we'll be going with here. After that, we'll be picking up our ultimate as well, which is going to be the Hunter, as well as his enhancements, and the main things that this give us from the actual enhancement itself is maximum and then overfilled ferocity when we activate it, as well as a bunch of bonus damage to injured enemies, and it also has a chance of resetting its own cooldown when you kill an enemy during its active duration. After that, we'll be picking up the Razor Wings skill, our final active skill, as well as Enhanced Razor Wings and then Invasive Razor Wings. This makes them last 300% longer and spiral outwards from the player. After that, we'll be picking up 1 rank of the Resolution passive over here. This makes you do extra damage against elite enemies after you cast your ultimate skill. We'll also be taking 1 rank of Sustenance, mostly to let us get 1 rank of Intricacy down here. This makes our ultimate skill reset the cooldown of our last used cooldown skill. We purposefully expend all of the charges of Razor Wings and then use our ultimate to fully reset them and give us 1 free cast per rank as well. This point then unlocks your key passive, for which we'll be taking Adaptive Stances. This is the only one that really gives us a proper bonus for early game, giving us a pretty consistent increase to movement speed, which is very important for leveling specifically. And then whenever you pop Scourge or use your ultimate, you get the increased core stats part of this too, which is just a general damage bonus, if nothing else. After that, we'll be going back over and putting the other 2 points into the Intricacy passive to give us extra casts whenever we reset. Then we'll be putting 1 point into the Spiritual Attunement passive, mostly just to let us put 3 points into Supremacy. This gives you stacking bonus damage for kills that you get while ultimate skills are active, and bonus stacks when they end, with the maximum damage bonus being 30%, which is pretty good. The goal is to keep this bonus as high as possible at all times as a result. After that, our next 4 points are going to be going into Razor Wings itself, and at this stage you will probably have your Razor Wings legendary aspect as well, as I expect it to be in the season journey this season. This will let us pivot even further towards the skill, so we want to put our next 4 points into the Hunter 2 to reduce its cooldown even further and enable more spamming of Razor Wings as a result of this through the Intricacy combo. Then we'll be sticking 3 points into the Behemoth passive over here, which gives you bonus damage for your potency skills at the cost of longer cooldowns, and we're resetting Razor Wings anyways a lot of the time through the ult, so that isn't a massive deal for us. Then we'll be taking 1 rank of Barrage over here, mostly for now, just as a gateway to 3 ranks of the Unrestrained Power passive. This gives you 12% increased damage whenever you're unstoppable or unhindered, which is a pretty solid bonus. After this, we'll be taking 2 more ranks of the Brilliance passive here, as well as the remaining 2 ranks of the Resolution passive in the Ultimate Cluster 2. By this point, if you've been able to do some minor tempering while leveling as well, you should be pretty much fully functional around the Storm Feathers from Evading and the Primary Spirit Hull choice, and the Razor Wings with resets through the Hunter as well. So our next 3 points will actually go into Thunder Spike, the basic skill, mostly because this will let us take all of the points out of Quill Volley in here, which frees up a lot of space without breaking any actual links here. This will enable us to grab Counter Attack as our actual final active skill here, as well as an enhancement which decreases the cooldown of the skill itself, and also Reinforced Counter Attack. And the main reason that we want to get this is for Reinforced Counter Attack, as this makes it just passively increase your critical strike damage up to 30% depending on how many enemies are close by, and this is a very valuable upgrade, especially early, and especially in combination with our crit chance increase from the Secondary Spirit Hull as well. After that, we'll be spending 3 points into Potent over here, specifically to increase the actual damage we do to enemies every time they are hit by a Jaguar skill, and this mostly takes effect against bosses whenever they trigger the effect of Counter Attack itself. Past that, we'll be putting 2 more points into Mirage up here for some extra dodge chance whenever we evade, and also a bonus to our crit chance that we get for 3 seconds anytime that we dodge. Especially in combination with the fact that we're now using Counter Attack, this can give us a lot of crit chance, which also scales well with the extra crit damage that we're getting too. Then our final points will be spent pretty much exclusively on actually survivability, 3 points into Diminishment for 15% less damage taken from vulnerable enemies, 3 points into Anti-Venom for a massive increase to our increased poison resistance, as well as maximum poison resistance 2, which pretty much just makes poison damage a non-factor for us for quite a while. Then for our final 2 points, 1 into Nourishment for a 20% increase to all healing that we get, and 1 point into Patient Guard for the bonus 10% block chance, just as a bit of an extra defensive bonus. That said, that's pretty much it for these skill points themselves, and in that section I did mention our Spirit Hull choices, but just to reiterate, primary and secondary Spirit Hull both Eagle as soon as you can get them. Primary Eagle does a ton of damage whenever you evade at low levels, and secondary Eagle gives you a ton of bonus crit chance while moving through areas, which leveling is chock full of, and crit chance is a rare commodity early on too. And again, to mention this part again, in the actual patch for Season 7, this will be up to 4-second duration after your first crit from this effect, not 2, so it is even more reliable for general combat. Moving on then to our gear, our legendaries, and also our tempering. There's a lot you can do these days, but generally I stick to only recommending 3 main legendary aspects while leveling, as you'll be swapping out gear in pretty much every slot except for your jewelry, so this is the best way of using crafting materials to speed it up. It doesn't take that much of a hit from jewelry being kept on from being lower item level compared to the other gear slots, so let's talk about the 3 specific aspects I recommend using in here. First up is the new aspect of Endless Talons. With this being a new legendary aspect and it being related to Razor Wings, which we know the devs want to incentivize players using, we can quite likely expect it to show up either in early season journey caches or from the bonus rewards you get for choosing to do the class quest now that it isn't mandatory to do so for the mechanical unlocks. So despite not being a dungeon unlock power, we can expect to see it quite early. This makes Razor Wings increase all Eagle skill damage that you do by 1% per hit, with critical strikes giving 3 stacks of this each. This should be quite strong, and once you reach the stage where we are mostly doing Razor Wings damage, you absolutely want this on your amulet. That said, before that, when you are mostly running off of Quill Volley as your main damage, you instead want the rebounding aspect on your amulet as soon as you can get it, really, and this is a bit of an RNG drop, but it is is very powerful for the setup. Another option if you have decent quality 1 drop is to use the unyielding hits aspect, which increases your weapon damage by a portion of your armor after you use a gorilla skill, and then to just replace one of our utility skills with something like payback turned into a core skill to keep the bonus active as much as possible. More standard and simple options that are strong for your other 2 slots then are the umbral aspect for resource generating early, as we apply a ton of crowd control, and this aspect can be added to your codex from the Champion's Demise dungeon, and then the Edge Masters aspect as well, which gives you increased damage in general depending on your amount of resource filled when you cast the skill. For early gear tempering as well, you want to focus on your general offensive boost with things like vulnerable damage increase, as we have great vulnerable uptime early, and for your resource tempering slots you want bonus Razor Wings charges, at least once you get to the point where Razor Wings is properly part of the build, as you can then spam it much more readily and do a lot more damage, especially in between hunter casts and the resets when group clearing. This is quite effective for. Up until that point, however, I do recommend going for hunter cooldown reductions, as this will increase the amount of Razor Wings that you're actually able to send out too. After that we've got Runewords, and I wouldn't expect you to have your pick of the litter while leveling, but Igni, the new rune, is a solid offering generator for the setup if you get lucky enough to find it while leveling, and you can pair this with the Q rune to trigger Earthen Bulwark for bonus survivability. This won't have the same effect as it did last season due to the fixes on Viscous Shield, but it's still an incredibly efficient source of barrier generation, which is quite nice to have. Then a secondary setup if you get it is the Sem rune, which is the one that gives you offering when you evade, and the Tzik rune, which is the one that casts Concussive Stomp. We haven't heard of this one being fixed yet, and last season this actually triggered the bonus from the unyielding hits aspect. It counted as casting a gorilla skill, and so if it still does work this way, then this rune word combo would let you use that aspect in the setup without any gorilla skills present for a nice hefty bonus. Aside from that, we have the Witchcraft Powers that we're aiming for. This isn't going to be perfect off rip as we don't know the order or locations of everything quite yet, but Poison Frog Servant was already pretty useful on the PTR, mostly for the rank 5 bonus that makes it pull and taunt enemies, but now it does a lot more damage too, which is definitely useful. Then we have Hex of Whispers, which applies a hex to all enemies hit, doing bonus damage the next time that they are hit, and then it jumps over to other enemies as well. Then we have Soul Harvest and Aura, which gives you 3% bonus of your primary stat for each nearby monster when you use a skill with a cooldown, which Razor Wings is, so we'll be doing this constantly. We'll be doing this a ton with Razor Wings, and it theoretically has no cap, so especially stacking with Adaptive Strikes, it should actually be quite powerful. Then we have Aura Specialization, which increases the size of our aura effects, and at rank 10 increases crit damage by 50% against any enemy within the radius 2. Then Hex Specialization, which increases the potency of hex effects, as well as increasing your crit chance against enemies affected by hexes as well. Then finally, our legendary power is going to be Piranado. This will trigger from enemies that are affected by Soul Harvest and Hex of Whispers at the same time, and this does pretty solid damage on its own, as well as pulling and grouping up enemies, making them even easier for us to destroy. Then finally, we have our Mercenaries, with Variana being high priority for leveling specifically, as her passive bonus gives movement speed as you kill enemies. This is fantastic for open world activities, and then you'd also go into Cleave. Hysteria for bonus attack speed constantly whenever she hits an enemy, Whirlwind, and then No Escape to make her pull enemies during her Whirlwind to help group them up and make damage easier to apply too. Then for reinforcement, we can take Rahir with the Bastion skill, which is a good defensive option to go off whenever we're injured as just a bonus defensive layer. As far as playing the build, early you want to focus on just building up enough resource to actually send out your Quill volley and then doing that. Then once you actually get the primary Spirit Hall involved, you just want to work in evades on cooldown during this while you're still spamming your Quill volley as much as you can, and then eventually we will focus more towards Razor Wings, at which point you'll be evading on cooldown still, but then firing out Razor Wings, and make sure that you empty all of your Razor Wing charges before you use your ultimate, because that way it will refill all of them while giving you the free cast too. That just about does it for our Spiritborn leveling build today, then everyone. It's not overly different than Season 6, except leaning a bit further into Eagle as a concept, even more than we did back then. And I'm excited to show you guys the fun stuff that Spiritborn is going to be capable of in the endgame to Season 2 once we get there, so stay tuned for that. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.